everyone, we're back with the Wild Robot Escapes, and we're starting out on chapter 73, the pigeons. Now perhaps the pigeons will be helpful to Bright Bill and Roz, hopefully. In the very heart of the city was a great swath of greenery, the old park. It had a rolling lawn, flower gardens, and dense wooded areas. It had lakes and ponds and fountains. It had playgrounds and benches and miles of cobblestone pathways. It also had pigeons. Thousands and thousands of pigeons. The city pigeons witnessed things you wouldn't believe. Nothing shocked them. They certainly weren't shocked by robots. So when Roz marched into the middle of the park, the pigeons weren't troubled in the least. She approached a flock that was about 100 birds strong, all cooing and strutting across cobblestones as if they owned the place. But as Roz stomped closer and closer, the pigeons scuttled out of the way to let her pass by. However, Roz didn't pass by. She stopped and glanced around, and when she saw that she was alone with the pigeons, she started speaking to them in the language of the animals. "Hello, pigeons, my name is Roz." The pigeons cocked their heads, which meant, is this robot actually speaking to us? "Yes, I am actually speaking to you. I am searching for my son. He is a goose named Bright Bill. Have you seen him?" For the first time in a long time, the pigeons were shocked. Several of them fluttered away from the talking robot, but most were too curious to leave. One pigeon was so curious that she strutted out from the flock and right up to the robot. "Let me get this straight," the curious pigeon said. "Your name's Roz. You've got a son named Bright Bill who's a goose." "That is correct." "I can't believe it. You guys, this is Roz from Graybeak Stories. Remember?" The flock began cooing excitedly. Have you heard of Graybeak?" said Roz. "Everyone's heard of Graybeak," said the pigeon. "A while back, she started telling stories about a goose whose mother was some kind of wild robot. We all thought she was joking, but I guess not." "She was not joking, but I have lost my son. I do not know how to find him. Perhaps Graybeak could help. Do you know where she is?" "Hate to tell you this, Roz, but Graybeak's dead." The birds all lowered their heads. You know, life ain't easy for us pigeons. We only live a few years out here if we're lucky. But we were especially sad when we lost Graybeak. She was one of the best. The others cooed in agreement. "I am sorry for your loss," said Roz. "I wish I had gotten to meet Graybeak. My son was very fond of her." The pigeon gazed up at the robot with a steely look in her eye. "Any friend of Graybeak is a friend of ours. If Bright Bill is lost, we're going to find him." She turned to the others. "You heard me, flock. Hit the skies. Tell every pigeon you see start searching for a goose named Bright Bill." At those words, the flock erupted into flight. Only the robot and the curious pigeon remained. "By the way, they call me Strutter," said the pigeon, fluffing out her chest feathers. "It is very nice to meet you, Strutter," said the robot. "Thank you for searching for Bright Bill. What can I do to help?" "You can help by staying put. I want you in this park when we return with your son. Don't hide or wander off or make us go searching for you too." "Oh, and another thing," Strutter said. "Stay away from the park ranger robot. He spends most of his time taking care of the grounds, but he's always looking for troublemakers." The pigeon gave a quick salute to the robot, and then she joined the search for Bright Bill. Chapter 74, the sky. Hours passed, the sun set in the west. More hours passed, the eastern sky began to glow. Roz spent the whole night in the park waiting for Strutter to return with Bright Bill. But there was no sign of them. In fact, there weren't any birds in the park at all. Roz couldn't let those thoughts distract her. She needed to stay alert. The park ranger robot had seen her once or twice already, and now she heard his footsteps wherever she went. Was the park ranger following Roz? Had he noticed our robot's unit number? Would he report her to the Ricos? Roz took a pathway into the woods, trying to escape the ranger's view. And that's when she heard familiar voices calling from the sky. "Where are you, Ma?" said Bright Bill. "Come on out, Roz," said Strutter. Roz turned toward the voices, but saw only leaves and branches. Bright Bill and Strutter were flying somewhere above the woods. She wanted to call back, but the park ranger was trailing her. Instead, she followed the sounds of their voices as they glided over the treetops. But then there came a new sound, a buzzing sound. It grew louder and closer. Air started blasting down from the sky. And when Roz looked up, she saw a white triangular airship floating above her. Chapter 75, the Ricos. 3 robots zipped down from airships on cables. The ground shook as their heavy feet slammed against the cobblestones. Then they stood side by side, forming a wall, their eyes locked on Roz. They were Rico 4, Rico 5, and Rico 6. "Hello, Roz, I'm Unit 7134. We are the Ricos. Come with us." The robotic voice belonged to Rico 4. He and his partners waited for their target to come forward, but Roz didn't move. She knew how dangerous the Ricos could be, and so did her son. From somewhere in the sky, Brightbill's frightened voice called out, "Run, Mama, run!" So Roz ran. She dashed up the pathway and leapt into the woods. Without crunching a weed, there we have Rico 4, 5, and 6. Without wrestling a leaf, the robot vanished into the thick foliage. The Ricos weren't concerned. They had other ways of tracking her, or so they thought. Their blocky heads swiveled from side to side, scanning the woods for Roz's electronic signal. They scanned and scanned and scanned, but found no trace of their target. Chapter 76, Morning. A steady stream of foot traffic was flowing past the park that morning. Several pairs of eyes noticed a Rozum unit running out of the woods. They watched as she looked around and started marching toward the sidewalk with the rest of the crowd. Roz had lost the Ricos back in the woods, but she knew they wouldn't stop searching for her. She needed to blend in with the normal robots in the street, so when she came upon a work crew marching toward a construction site, she joined the end of their line. But the crew immediately halted and turned to face her. Our robot stepped backward, away from the crew, and bumped into a young woman. "I am sorry," said Roz, gently grasping the woman's shoulder. "Get your hands off me! Whose robot is this? There's something wrong with her!" Everyone stopped and stared. Humans pointed. Automobiles slowed. There were whispers about a defective robot on the loose. And then the white triangular airship appeared. It floated out from between tall buildings and headed out for our robot. Roz lurched forward and backward again and again, trying to think of a plan until a voice suddenly squawked behind her. "Follow us, Mama!" Brightbill and Strutter swooped past, and the robot went racing after them. She wove through the crowds, sprinted down streets, leapt across intersections. Horns blared and humans screamed and robots shuffled out of the way. The birds made one last turn and fluttered into a narrow side street. A group of tomcats were there lurking in the shadows. They crouched and licked their lips and dreamed of feasting on goose and pigeon. Then the robot came stomping up and the cats hissed and scattered in every direction. Strutter pointed to a heavy circular panel on the pavement and said, "Lift that up!" Roz lifted the panel. Beneath it was a ladder that descended into a deep, dark hole. "Climb down there," said Strutter. "A friend of mine is expecting you." The robot looked from the pigeon to the goose. "Do what she says, Ma," cried Brightbill. "There's no time to waste." "But how will I find you again?" said Roz. "Just go." Chapter 77, The Underground. Our robot was standing in a long, shadowy tunnel. Murky water trickled along the floor. The sour smells filled the air. Roz was below ground in the city sewers. There was a squeak. The robot's headlights flashed onto a crack in the wall. A rat's pointy face pointed out. "Must be Roz," said the rat, wriggling his nose. "I hear you're in trouble." "That is correct. I need to get as far from here as possible." "I know where to take you," said the rat, and he started scampering down the tunnel. The rat knew the sewers better than anyone, but his short legs couldn't carry him very fast, so Roz carried him. She scooped him up, plopped him on her shoulder, and said, "Tell me where to run." With the rat squeaking directions in her ear, Roz stomped deeper into the underground. She splashed down side tunnels, crawled through narrow passageways, carefully crossed subway tracks. Occasionally, they came upon a carnivorous chamber. Most of the chambers were empty, but some contained jumbles of pipes. The rat would scurry across the damp, dirty floor while the robot climbed the pipes as if they were trees. Mechanical sounds echoed out from some of the tunnels. Robot crews were hard at work. They spent their lives laboring below the city. Many of them would never see daylight. Roz was curious, of course, but she dared not spy on them. Those workers had no idea that a fellow robot was sneaking through their underground home. After traveling through miles of tunnels, the rat and the robot came to a dead end. A ladder was bolted to the wall and disappeared into a hole in the ceiling. "I don't know what you'll find up there," squeaked the rat, "but good luck." "It cannot be any worse than where I was," said Roz, placing him on the ground. "Thank you for your help." The robot gave the rat a quick little scratch behind the ears, and then she climbed up to the street. Chapter 78, The Chase. The street was empty. No people walking, no robots working, no automobiles driving. Roz looked up to the sky, hoping to see Brightbill or Strutter, but what she saw was a fleet of white triangular airships. They were floating above the city, searching for the runaway robot, and they spotted her. "Rozum Unit 7134, do not move." 3 robots zipped down from the ship on cables. They were Rico's 10, 11, and 12. Each had a rifle at his side, but they didn't fire their weapons yet. Their orders were to retrieve the target unharmed if possible. Our robot's survival instincts blared like sirens in her head, and she burst away from the Rico. She sprinted down the empty street and onto another empty street. All the streets seemed to be empty, but they wouldn't be empty for long. More and more big, bulky robots came zipping down to join the chase. The Ricos moved like machines. Their target moved like an animal. The wild robot stayed low, gliding across the streets, darting around buildings, vanishing into shadows. Her computer brain brought back those games of hide-and-seek she played on the farm, but this was no game. Roz never should have gone into that alley. She was halfway through it when the Ricos appeared at both ends. There was only one direction to go. Using all the strength in her legs, our robot launched herself high into the air, and she clamped onto the side of a building. Frightened faces peered out from window, but Roz didn't want to frighten anyone. She just wanted to go home. The robot launched herself up and across the alley and clamped onto an opposite building. Back and forth she went, leaping between buildings, climbing higher and higher until she landed on a flat, lofty rooftop. The sky was filled with white airships. All at once, the ships turned toward Roz. The engines buzzed as they closed in on our robot, but then came a strange swishing sound. Pigeons, hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Wave upon wave of pigeons streamed up from the streets and swarmed around the airships. Strutter had rallied her friends from every corner of the city. They always hated airships, buzzing loudly, crowding the skies, forcing birds to fly low, and now the city's worth of pigeons were unleashing their anger. As you'd expect, the airships fought back. Blazing beams of light flickered across the skyline, left charred feathers floating in the breeze. But the pigeons didn't retreat. They tightened around the ships, distracting them, confusing them. There was a deafening screech. Little bodies fell. The ship spiraled out of sight, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. Roz watched in horror as more pigeons and ships went down. She hollered for the birds to fly away, but they were lost in a fighting frenzy. Heavy feet thumped onto the roof. Roz unit, 7134, do not move. Roz didn't look. She just ran from the voice, leaped to the next rooftop, and kept on leaping. Our robot leaped onto a higher rooftop, then a lower one. Up and down she went, leaping from building to building. Footsteps thundering behind her, but still the Ricos did not fire their rifles. Mama, I'm here. What should we do? Said Bright Bill. Bright Bill, you must fly to safety. It is too dangerous up here. Then in a softer voice, the robot said, I cannot escape. No, Mama, you've come too far. Don't give up now. But Roz was finished running. She slowed and stopped at the edge of a rooftop. The goose fluttered down into her arms, and the friends held each other close. You have been such a good son. You saved my life so many times, but now you must save yourself and go on without me. Will I see you again? Said Bright Bill, wiping his eyes. I do not think so, said Roz. They still had so much to say to each other, but there wasn't any more time. So they said the only things that really mattered. I love you, Mama. I love you, son. Airships circled above. Ricos dropped onto rooftops. Rifles pointed at our robot. A voice boomed, Roz, I'm unit 7134, do not move. But Roz did move. She heaved her son toward the sky so he could fly to safety, and in that instant, a trigger was pulled. A blazing beam of light flashed onto our robot's leg. Damage sensors flared as the leg turned bright orange and melted away. Poor Roz tried to keep her balance, but she was already toppling backward off the roof. She seemed to hang in the air, sparkling in the sunlight. Then she fell down, down, down to the street below. As Roz was falling, she took one last look at Bright Bill soaring in the sky above. She watched him get smaller and smaller, then everything suddenly went dark. Next time, we will read chapter 79 and see what has happened to Roz. See you then.